The Nerdcast Empire is on the air. We are back with another week of the Hard Rock Empire for Sunday, July 27th, our last Sunday in the month of July. I am Matt in the studio. Great to have you along with us, and we are talking the music of July. There it was.
That's weird.
There it goes. So I don't know. We may have dropped out some audio there. If you're listening live, apologies, but we'll figure that out. It was working earlier, and then it kind of disappeared, so I'm not sure what happened there, but it does appear audio is back. But again, we'll be back again with you next Sunday night, 7 o'clock Eastern, for another episode of the Hard Rock Empire. But it is time to get to the new music for this week. And again, not a lot of songs to choose from this week, not a lot of albums to choose from, but we still have some good stuff on there. And we're going to paste that playlist for this week into both chats, and you can go through and check out Mike's playlist and find a couple of new albums that you really like that you can listen to. Of course, each week Mike goes through and pulls the new albums for a given date. The date in question this time is July the 4th, and then once that is done, he goes through, listens to a song from each one of those albums, and I come in behind and will, based on his recommendations, listen to some songs as well. And we will pick 2 new albums each to spotlight on this podcast. And again, I was a little concerned when you told me there were 30-something albums. I thought that could be bad. We might have to combine a couple weeks together. But upon your first listen through, you reassured me that there was enough good music, and indeed you were right. We did have some good stuff in there, and even some more stuff that we didn't pick. So definitely encourage you to check out the playlist. But it is time to get to said new music for this week. And Mike, as always, you will get us started. What do you got for us this week?
Yeah, so I am hanging out in Italy this week, it turns out. Pick number 1 for me is a gothic metal band. This is their first full-length album. They are Grimorio, and the album is On the Path of the Morning Star.
I'll be curious at the end of the year to go back and get an update on our country list, because Italy has got to be, of the countries that are not the United States, Italy's got to be right near the top of the list.
It has definitely been coming on strong lately. This band, they formed in 2023, and they consist of Liliana Teobaldi on bass, Francesco Palladino on drums, Christian Balsamo on guitars and keyboards, and Mirko Di Bella on vocals, guitars, and keyboards. The members of the band are all veterans of the scene, each having multiple prior bands, some dating back a couple decades. The Burning Mind Music Group website, where you can purchase their CD, has a small write-up about the band saying, quote, "Their heavy horror metal draws inspiration from legendary acts like Death SS and King Diamond. The sonic tapestry is enriched with a golden thread of personal flair, making their musical offering truly unique. The lyrics venture into the dark realms of gothic/horror literature, European folklore, and occultism." I think what kind of drew me to this band is their uniqueness. Like, there are a lot of gothic rock and metal and horror punk bands and whatnot out there, but these guys just kind of have their own sound, which I think is always refreshing. Generally, when a band promotes themselves as gothic or horror metal, I'm going to be interested, but for them, like, they got this whole atmospheric thing going on, but not at the expense of rocking or being heavy. I think the other big factor is Mirko's vocal delivery. He's not trying to sound like the other gothic rock vocalists that you can think of. The best way I can think to describe him, and it's not the best comparison, but it's really all I can go on. He kind of sounds like some weird combination of King Diamond meets Billy Corgan. It's different and may not be for everyone, but I think it's really awesome. Standout tracks on the album, which is not a very long album, but standout tracks include Morning Star, Marie Laveau, As Above, So Below, and the track that I picked to listen to, Unholy Communion.
Let's check this out. This is Grimorio with their release On the Path of the Morning Star. This is the opening track on that album, Unholy Communion. Let's listen to a little bit of that now. Yeah, I definitely see the King Diamond comparison with the falsetto range, but it's not. But it didn't sound like King Diamond.
No.
But it's like King Diamond-esque. But yeah, that's a different sound for sure. I mean, the guitars are really outstanding. That solo that came in after the
Yeah.
chorus was really good. It's got that chant type nature to it, but without being overwhelming by it, because I think so much of the stuff we listen to that's that style can be droning. This wasn't that. That's got a really interesting sound to it. I'm interested in checking out more of that album.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the plus sides to having a lighter week as far as releases go. I think it gives you a chance to really kind of jump into something that's maybe off the beaten path, and definitely glad I did. This album is really awesome.
Yeah, I'm going to make that comment when I get to mine as well. I think sometimes you've got a lighter week. You dig into something that maybe you would have looked over in a week that had 100 releases. But, no, that's really good stuff. Definitely want to check more out from Grimorio. Their new album out on July the 4th. You can check that out. As always, you have 2 picks each and every week. What do you have for pick number 2?
Yeah, so pick number 2, once again, hanging out in Italy. This is the debut solo project of one Marco Rinaldi. He is an Italian guitarist and producer. This is his prog rock project. It is Rimmar, and the album is called Raises.
Yeah, this was another one that I had marked to go back and give a full listen to. Another very interesting choice this week.
Yeah, this one, you know, you think of like progressive rock, but then you think of what really progressive is, and I think he kind of nails it because it's all over the place. It's not just let's see just how technically sound we are with our instruments and how many notes we can play. It's not even so much that. It's just how many different styles of music and sounds that still kind of fit within rock can we shoehorn into this project to come up with the biggest, most ambitious thing possible. I think a couple of the websites referred to his project as audacious, and I think that's probably fair. Yeah, I mentioned here numerous sites discussing the album referred to it as the audacious solo project of Italian guitarist and producer. Yeah, along with the release of this album, he released a music video for the song Mighty Messenger, which features vocals from the current singer of Angra, longtime former vocalist of Rhapsody of Fire, and the original lead singer of Labyrinth and Vision Divine, one Fabio Leone. You know, if you're a prog metal guitarist and you want to do a solo project, you could certainly pick worse singers to collaborate with. He's featured on a couple of the tracks, and they're both really good. He brought in some other help on vocals, too, including Matteo Fagiolo from White Thunder and Dragonhammer, Marco Bertuccelli from Smelly Boggs, J27, and 80 Sunset Strip, Marco Andreotti from an Imagine Dragons tribute. Kind of random, but in there. Then also Kyo Kalati from Mind Ahead and Elisa Prioetti from Daruma. So yeah, a lot of vocalists, a lot of different vocalists, which is really cool too when you have this great musician. Just seeing what kind of songs you can put together with various vocalists, and this one is really cool. On the Rock Shots Records website, they talk about the various styles blended in creating this album, including nostalgic elements from 80s metal, 90s prog, classic progressive and industrial metal, as well as synthwave and electronic elements. There's something here for everyone, I think. You have songs like Mighty Messenger, which feels kind of pretty much straight up progressive rock, really cool song. Then you have something like Vortex, which has this electronic new wavy thing going on, both of which have Leone on vocals, and they're both really good tracks. Another track that's worth kind of looking into if you're checking out this band, there's a really cool cover of the song Cruel Summer, the Bananarama song, which is a really great, underrated 80s song, I think.
Agree, yeah.
And a great cover. Other standout tracks on the album include Unreal, Planet Mars, Vortex, Raises, and the song that I picked to listen to, Mighty Messenger.
Yeah, let's check out Rimmar with their release Raises. This is the second track off of this album, Mighty Messenger. Let's check out a little bit of that now. You know, the vibe of that song reminds me of like maybe some of the harder stuff from Dio, even in Heaven and Hell type stuff.
Yeah, I can hear that.
You know, it's not. It'd be like, what if Dio sang prog metal? Like, you know, it's definitely not necessarily the same music style, but the vocals feel very inspired by a Ronnie James Dio type singer, and not surprising knowing who the singer is. That you know, again, perfect choice there, and sound like a lot of the other guest vocalists were really good as well. Yeah, this was one of the more interesting choices on the list this week, and I figured one of the two of us was going to get a hold of this one, and I have not listened to the whole album yet, but I'm excited to go back and do it because, again, I love prog metal, and I love it when it's weird. Like, I love it when there's lots of it, because sometimes we get some of this prog stuff, and all 10 tracks sound exactly the same. I don't think this is that way here.
We're not doing that here. That is definitely not the case.
I love that. You know, give me some variety. Show me how progressive you can be over a 9-track album. So I'm interested in checking out the rest of that one. But you can check it out as well. It's Rimmar with Raises. Their new album is out on July the 4th. Time for me to give you my 2 picks this week, and we are starting off right here in the U.S. of A. We are staying domestic for my first pick. We're going to take a hard rock heavy metal band from New Hope, Pennsylvania. This is Metal6000 with their release Next in Line. So these guys, this is their debut album, and they've done a really nice job for their debut. This band is made up of Keith Kenny on lead guitar and vocals, Jonathan Luberecki on bass, Ian Kelly on drums, Eli Ward on rhythm guitar, and Glenn McClelland on keyboards. They've released one single off this album. It's Blackout. We're going to hear it in just a moment. It has made playlists on Apple Music for breaking metal and breaking hard rock. You know, I saw a review of this band. They played their first show in New Hope back in January, and it mentions that Keith Kenny, who I mentioned as the lead guitarist and vocalist, wrote all of this music 25 years ago when he was a teenager.
Wow.
So you definitely get that feeling when you hear this. You know, I think, you know, it's got that 90s, 2000s feel to it. It's got a great classic rock foundation to it with the metal elements throughout the album. This is exactly what Mike mentioned earlier about one of his picks. This is an album that in a week with 100 releases might have fallen through the cracks, but with 30-some releases, you know, something really hooked me in the playlist song, so I listened to the whole album, and I thought it was really great. I was glad I was able to dive into it, and I can recommend it on this podcast. You know, for a first album, they really knocked it out of the park, so excited to see where it goes from here. Standout tracks include One Man Show, With a Gun, Next in Line, the song I've already mentioned. The song we're going to listen to is Blackout. So let's check these guys out. This is Metal6000 with their first release, Next in Line. This is the opening track off of that album, Blackout. So let's listen to a little bit of that now.
No one can explain it, explain the reasons why, but everything you learn in life ends up to be a lie. Eternity has failed you, you know something's gone wrong. Your favorite band can no longer play your favorite song. The only time that you're alone, you want someone around. The light at the end of the tunnel that you never found.
One thing about both of my picks this week is they're both very much rooted in classic rock, which is something a little bit different, I think. But we see it every so often on our playlists, and as someone who still enjoys classic rock to this day, I always find that very interesting. And before I throw it to you, I see Chris in the chat saying Grimorio has already interacted with our post, so thank you to Grimorio. Hopefully, like I said, really awesome album. But thoughts on Metal6000, Mike?
I love the rawness of the sound. Musically, it's great, but it's like, I assume that was the sound they were going for, but it feels like something that someone like just traded you, like, here, check us out, some new band I found. It has this kind of underground vibe to it that I dig. I think I want to hear more from these guys, because I think if this is just the beginning, and it can only get cooler from here. Also, the album artwork is really awesome.
For sure, which again, when you're going through these picks, when you see album art like that, it just immediately like, okay, this has got to be something I'm going to enjoy. And you're 100% right, and that's really a connection I hadn't made. Is it does feel raw, polished, but raw in a way that does feel like the tape trading days of the 1980s, and they found something there, and if they can build on that, I think there's a bright future ahead for them. So definitely check those guys out. Metal6000 with their first album out on July the 4th. As always, I have 2 picks as well. And we are going to head to the United Kingdom, Lancaster in the United Kingdom for our next band. This is Wytch Hazel with V or 5 Lamentations. So you'll realize that it is 5, but it is the Roman numeral for 5 when we get to the fact this is their 5th album. This hard rock band formed in 2011. They were originally formed as Jerusalem. Figured out that there was another band called Jerusalem, unsurprisingly. So after 2 years, they changed their name to Wytch Hazel with a Y. That was in 2013. This is their 5th studio album. And this is a band, as we've had many times over the weeks, that leans very heavily into the new wave of British heavy metal sound from the 1970s and 1980s. The Wikipedia entry lists Iron Maiden, Led Zeppelin, and Jethro Tull as influences. I don't think that's going to surprise anybody when you hear this track. The band is made up of Colin Hendra on guitar and vocals, Alex Haslam on guitar, Andy Shackleton on bass, and Aaron Hay on drums. It's, we've had this a lot on this podcast where a band will, new band, relatively new, obviously they've only been around for 14 years, but they play a sound, music that sounds from the 70s and 80s, but they do it in a way that it sounds modern. It doesn't sound dated in any way. I've just really enjoyed this album, and really excited to go back and check out their past catalog and their previous 4 albums, but overall I thought this was really good front to back. Standout tracks include I Lament, The Citadel, Woven, and the song we're going to listen to on the podcast is Elements. Check these guys out now. This is Wytch Hazel with their 5th album, V, Lamentations. This is the 4th track off of this album, Elements. So let's listen to a little bit of that now. And the reason I picked that clip out, even though they have another song that has more views on YouTube Music, is I just love the guitars in that. The guitars just give you such a vibe from that 70s and 80s era of guitar. And it all just kind of works together really well. But overall, it's just a really enjoyable kind of throwback listen from these guys. Mike, your thoughts on Wytch Hazel?
Yeah, I listened to this whole album. I thought it was amazing, just as far as so different than what I normally listen to. Like, the way they kind of lean in on that 70s rock thing is just, it's kind of refreshing despite being a sound from, how many years now? 50 years ago? But yeah, them mentioning influences like Jethro Tull, Deep Purple, Thin Lizzy, Blue Oyster Cult, like it's pretty much spot on, and I like that there's a band out there doing that with a sound that just sounds so refined too. Like, it doesn't sound like I'm listening to a cassette player. We need more bands like that, and that music needs to be more out in the public, I suppose.
Yeah, 100%. I really enjoyed this album. And again, probably another beneficiary of a lighter release week. I think this was really good, and getting to listen to it all the way through kind of cemented that. But really good stuff from Wytch Hazel.
The other thing about them real quick is that I think we've had instances in the past where bands have come out with kind of that 70s sound, but they always feel, I don't want to say like they're ripping off another band, but they sound maybe a little too close to another act. These guys don't. They sound like their own thing. You can hear the influences, but at no point did it feel like, oh, they're just playing like these guys. No, it sounded original, but classic.
Yeah, that's a great point, because, we try sometimes to say, well, they sound like this or sound like that. And I listed the influences, but I couldn't, as I listened to the album, pick out one thing that's like, oh, well, this part sounds like this or this part sounds like that. They, in 5 albums over the course of these 14 years, have really honed in on a sound that is uniquely theirs, which is awesome to be able to do that and yet still throw back to that 70s and 80s sound. It was, like I said, sometimes you find one of these albums that just surprises you because it kind of comes out of nowhere. This was one of those ones for me. It was a real treat. Definitely check out Wytch Hazel. Really good stuff from them this week, or out as of July the 4th. That's going to wrap up our new music this week. It is time to head into the vault. Mike and I will each give you a classic album you need to check out. And Mike is going through his collection for a second time, really a third time if you count the glam band trip through there. But we're up to the letter U now, believe it or not. We're almost through the alphabet once again. And this is a band that obviously we both really, really enjoy, and always great to spotlight these guys on the podcast. And Mike, what do you have for the vault this week?
Yeah, so the letter U is a really difficult letter. I'm trying to pull up my collection real quick.
I can't imagine you've got a ton of U.
Based on what I've picked the first couple times through the vault, I think that is definitely the case. Let's see.
Thankfully, you didn't pick the YouTube album that got thrown onto everybody's.
I don't claim that I own that. I mean,
nobody
does.
does.
It's somewhere like in my iTunes library or something, probably still. But
for sure,
I don't remember seeing it recently. I don't know if
did they take it back off? Maybe
I don't know. That is a great question. Yeah. So for the letter U, I'm looking at. Well, I haven't gotten around to them yet, but I did buy a box set of UFO.
Oh,
albums,
yeah.
So I need to listen to those. So that would definitely increase my U bands roster. Otherwise, I have Unwritten Law. That's a good album. Elva, that was good. Ugly Kid Joe's Greatest Hits, and two albums by this band. I only had one originally up until this week when I realized I needed another letter U album. The first album of theirs I actually already used as a vault choice the first time around the alphabet, but I had not really listened to the second album, and I felt like I should because the first album was amazing. That being said, we are going to 2014. The supergroup in question is Unisonic, and this is their second and final album, Light of Dawn.
Yeah, sadly, I had not listened to this album either before today, but I did listen to the whole thing today, and it did not disappoint. Just these guys obviously are amazing.
It's weird to say this, but I kind of feel like somehow Michael Kiske is underrated.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I mean, he might be the best metal vocalist ever.
It's amazing to me, and we mentioned it off the air, and then I'll let you dive into it, that Unisonic, I mean, I get why there's no more Unisonic, and you'll touch on that, so I don't want to steal your thunder, but this, to me, when you take these two albums, they sound so different than the other stuff he's done over the years that I wish there was a way that every 5 or 10 years they could just throw a Unisonic album out there, because even though I love all the other stuff he does too, this is just has such a unique sound to it.
Yeah, if I was to try to place it anywhere, and it's weird because you have Kai Hansen involved too, and what I'm going to say doesn't. It almost sounds like a modern version of maybe what Halloween was doing on like Pink Bubbles Go Ape. Like, it's so not traditional Halloween, but still amazing. But anyway, Unisonic, they're a supergroup that started back in 2009 from former Halloween singer Michael Kiske with Dennis Ward and Costa Zaffirio from Pink Cream 69 and Mandy Meyer from Asia and Gothard. A couple years later, they were joined by fellow Halloween alum Kai Hansen. So right there, you already have this reunion of Kiske and Hansen, which is going to prove to be important later on. Obviously, Kai Hansen joining was a big deal because he hadn't worked with Kiske in the studio since 1988 on Keeper of the Seven Keys Part 2. I knew their first album was amazing, but for whatever reason, I just didn't get around to this one. I don't know why. And it's sad in a way that I think Unisonic will probably be most remembered as kind of like the first stages of what would eventually become the Pumpkins United and the current Halloween that we have with their, darn near everybody lineup. But I mean, that's not a bad thing in a way because it's great that they're all back together and they're getting along. But man, Unisonic had some amazing songs over 2 full-length studio albums. I assume a lot of that has to do with Dennis Ward from Pink Cream 69 originally. He wrote a lot of the material, and obviously Pink Cream 69 was a huge band. They unfortunately are no longer with us either, but you look at his credits, and he's been involved in so many projects too. So he's definitely a prolific dude, and I gotta think that his writing is a lot of why we kind of got this not quite Halloween, but also kind of Halloween sounding product that just make the vocals just stand out even more. I think it's such a good album. The first one was amazing. Obviously, these guys stopped once the Pumpkins United thing happened. They were asked, I think, around 2016, and it was told, yeah, we stopped that. With now that we've rejoined Halloween, we're not doing this anymore, which is unfortunate. The second album did have some charting success. It made it to number 10 on the Finnish album charts, 13 on the German chart, 20 on the Swiss chart, and 24 on the Oricon Japanese chart. So people were listening to it, thankfully. Standout tracks on it, it's hard to pick because the whole album is stellar, but Your Time Has Come, Exceptional for the Kingdom, Not Gonna Take Any More, Find Shelter, Throne of the Dawn. It's just awesome. I mean, if you're into power metal, why haven't you listened to this? Why haven't I listened to this?
I was gonna say.
Now that I've listened to this, why haven't you listened to this?
Yeah, the first album of theirs is, if we had to, like, we haven't done this question yet for the power trio, like the 3 albums you take on a deserted island type of question, where it's like you can only have 3 albums to listen to.
I'm glad we haven't done that, because that would be...
Well, there you go. We got maybe one for next week. But that Unisonic album would be on the final list of when I was deciding which ones to take.
It'd be a hard one to keep off the list. It's a stellar album.
It's an amazing album, but like Mike, I had not listened to their second album either, and I'm sad that I hadn't, and it will be on my playlist from here on out, because it's amazing too. I think I would favor the first album, but I think that's only because I've heard it so many more times, probably dozens, if not hundreds of times at this point. But this is every bit as good. Just, it's amazing. And again, I love Halloween. I love the fact they were able to get back together. And I think, like you said, this band is going to be known as one of the key pieces to making that happen. And that's both awesome and sad that this band would be relegated to just the thing that got Halloween back together, because it's so amazingly good. And again, as I said earlier, it is so different than your modern Halloween sound. You probably can go back a ways and maybe find an ample comparison, but it's just really great. And if you like this podcast, the music we talk about on this podcast, some podcasts will be like, you need to watch these movies before you understand this podcast. To me, the 2 albums from Unisonic are 2, like, if you want to really understand the type of music we like, that's a great place to start, by just listening to those 2 albums. Like, okay, I kind of understand what you're going for there.
Yeah, I agree. And there's probably a much larger list of, hey, these are the albums you need to listen to catch up. But, yeah, that's not a bad place to start.
And that could be another power trio question, is pick 3 albums to give to somebody they understand your music. I don't know if we did that one already or not, but that's one you could do probably 100 times.
To be totally honest.
We've done this for so many weeks now. But amazing album, amazing band. I wish there was more Unisonic, but go, run, don't walk, and go get Unisonic.
On to the letter V next. I have no idea what I'm going to do for that, so that'll be fun.
That should be interesting for sure. But yeah, so great stuff. Unisonic, amazing. Great choice as always for the vault. I am continuing through the Frontiers bands, and we are up to the letter J, and it is my pick this week. So I figured it was really easy to pick a guy that we talk about a lot on this podcast, one of the all-time great vocalists, and again, another guy who may very well be underrated as a vocalist in metal. This is the 10th studio album from Joe Lynn Turner. It is Secondhand Life, was released in 2007 by Frontiers Records. This album is just great. You should, after you go listen to the Unisonic albums, you need to go get this one next. In addition to Turner writing this, others that assisted on the writing included Jim Peterick and Martin Briley. So we've talked about those guys before. Peterick has come up on several occasions. Of course, Joe Lynn Turner has been the front man for Fandango, Rainbow, Yngwie Malmsteen, Mother's Army, Brazen Abbott, Hughes Turner Project with Glenn Hughes, Sunstorm, among others. To me, this album has a very Journey-esque sound to it, of maybe the rocking side of Journey. It's got a great AOR sound without sounding cheesy. I would say it's a little bit harder on the AOR melodic rock scale than some bands. This is, again, it's just great. The album's great. Joe Lynn Turner's amazing. And I'm glad I got to check out some of his solo stuff, and I'd love to go back now and check out more of his solo stuff, in addition to all the different albums he's been on, because you look at his Wikipedia page, and it goes on and on and on. But great stuff for sure. Definitely invite you to check it out. Standout tracks, the whole album's great, but if you want to pick some, In Your Eyes, Got Me Where You Want Me, The Stroke of Midnight, and Two Lights. I mean, again, Joe Lynn Turner's amazing, and this album was great, and I'm glad that I'm getting a chance through this project to catch up on some of the solo acts and some of the stuff out there that maybe I just hadn't checked out. But yeah, just I said, one of the legendary vocalists of melodic rock.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm trying to think of what my first kind of introduction to him was. Probably like Malmsteen's Odyssey. He sang Heaven Tonight, Hold On. Obviously, Rainbow, he sang on Stone Cold, which is classic. Did he also sing on Street of Dreams, too? Yeah, he did.
That's another great song.
Great song. Definitely not a hard song, but, definitely his vocal style. And, yeah, the dude's a legend. There's no doubt about it.
Well, and those songs you mentioned, that reminds me of this album. You think a song like Street of Dreams would fit on this album,
I can see that.
But yeah, just a guy who, I think sometimes these guys who have bounced around, I think the people who know, but I think the casual music fan might just think, well, why does this guy keep bouncing around? Well, that's kind of how the business goes sometimes. But incredibly talented guy. Really enjoyed this album, and definitely looking forward to checking out more of his solo stuff. So we'll take another swing at the letter J next week and see what we come up with, and it'll be very interesting to see, because there's some more great choices for the letter J on the Frontiers list. But that takes care of our vault for this week, and it's time to get to the Power Trio, our hard rock hat trick each and every week. And this was sometimes some weeks maybe it's a little harder than others to come up with these topics, and ended up coming up with one this week that was the 3 bands you'd want to write your life soundtrack. And I thought there was really a couple different ways you could go with this. I think if somebody chooses their 3 favorite bands of all time and say, I want those 3 bands to write my soundtrack, perfectly valid way to do it. I went a little different route, and I'll explain my choices when we get there, but it didn't just pick my 3 favorite bands. I actually have reasons for why I would want each one to do a part of my life soundtrack. But Chris is giving his in the chat. Did we get anything from Shane this week?
Yes, we did.
Awesome.
Not a whole lot of discourse around why they were selected.
Okay.
I was kind of bouncing my ideas off of him. Let's see. Well, he did say his are bands that made music that always kind of like synchronized with his energy, mood, feeling, just kind of a gut feeling kind of thing, and that's fine.
Absolutely.
His picks include all great bands, mind you, Trivium, Queen, and Rammstein.
Okay.
Like, I'm trying to think of what the soundtrack ultimately ends up like when you have those bands put it together, and it would be pretty fantastic. His wife also chimed in with 3.
Okay.
Withhold judgment on these. We have Hanson, Fleetwood Mac, and Taylor Swift.
Okay.
That would be the most expensive soundtrack ever, just to pay for the acts that, with the exception of maybe Hanson. Like, I imagine you'd have to really pay money to book Fleetwood Mac and Taylor Swift to write your album. But, I mean, that sounds like a legit soundtrack.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously all major artists, and knowing, I'm presuming the age of his wife, if it's similar to our age, Hanson does make a lot of sense when you're thinking about how big they were in the late 90s. And I would think, that's kind of that portion of your life, possibly those teenage years, I would think, is what she's going for there. But interesting picks. So Fleetwood Mac maybe getting back together. We talked about it last week. So that maybe there's hope, I guess. If you've got a big enough check, maybe you can get that soundtrack.
The Fleetwood Mac thing kind of reminds me of something I read when researching Unisonic, and it was kind of talking about the reunion of Halloween, and you had like Michael Kiske, who hadn't worked with Michael Wyckoff in years, and kind of had a falling out because obviously Wyckoff fired him back in like '93, and they ran into each other like in 2014, and it's just this is how like aging artist beefs should resolve themselves. Like Wyckoff basically, like the first thing he said to him was like, "Why can't you forgive me? What did I do?" And Kiske basically realized at that point in time he had forgiven him a long time ago, and everything was fine after that. It's like that's how aging rock stars should handle these things.
Well, I mean, anytime, I know we're getting a little bit of a off topic, but it's like anytime you have a major artist pass away, like we talked about Ozzy in the open of this podcast, you just think about so many of these other bands that everybody's getting older. Fleetwood Mac, obviously, no exception. And you just think, like, man, how many more days on this earth do you have to do this? Like, do you want to hold a grudge to the grave?
Yeah.
Or do you want to, like, try to make music and have the last few memories for you and your fans and your families? Like, I get that there are some of these bands, we've talked about it, Skid Row and Sebastian Bach are probably never getting back together again. But why not? Like, why can't you guys just put it aside and find a way to just get along? Because, again, you don't know when the clock strikes for any of us. So try to enjoy it. I don't know.
I feel like there's probably a bit of a difference, and I think it comes down to whether when you look back on your career with somebody, did you at any point in time like them or not? Because I get the feeling with Bach, some of the members of Skid Row
never liked him.
Yeah. And there's not, so you can't even look back on some of the memories and think fondly of the time spent with that person.
Sure.
Whereas obviously like a Fleetwood Mac, they uncertainly had really good times over the years.
They sure did.
So there's at least that.
Yeah, you at least have some sort of thing to tie it back together.
Yeah.
But, anyway, Chris has his picks in the chat. What does Chris have for us?
Yeah, Chris has some good picks too. I would listen to this album. He went with not surprisingly Rush for number 1. Number 2, Slaughter, which I thought was kind of out there, but totally underrated pop metal band. I think those guys are really good. And finally, Stone Temple Pilots. I think an underrated grunge, post-grunge band. I feel like they never truly got the same billing as some of the big bands of that period. Also giving honorable mentions to Jim Johnston and Bruce Faulconer. So there you go.
Just couldn't get Rock the Dragon out of the chat. I don't know if Chris is still in the chat or not, but looking at his list, first off, he sounds like a guy who's our age based on the bands chosen. But I think if I had to guess, and I'd be curious to get his thoughts, my guess is that is probably in large part because of playing music with his older brothers, and their influences are probably much more in line with our influences, which probably then influenced his influences.
Fly to the Angels is a great song.
No question. I mean, Up All Night, like, I have no issue with any of those picks, but I think for someone his age to have those picks, I think that if I had to guess, the influences from his brothers probably played a big role in those 3 bands being on his list.
I would say you're right. And I mentioned Michael Kiske as like greatest vocalist ever. Mark Slaughter, tremendously underrated.
Yeah,
that guy can sing.
He sure can. And again, another dude that and Chris certainly chiming in. I kind of figured, and yeah, good point. Obviously Doors and Hendrix would certainly be on their list as well. Yeah, I mean, another guy who, again, probably got pigeonholed in that era he sang in, but had he been a vocalist in any other era, I think people would put him on the list up there with some of the greats for sure. You got picks as well. What do you got for your soundtrack picks?
Yeah, so I ended up with 2 trios here. Okay. I kind of went diverging directions here. I thought, we've been doing this podcast now for over a year. Like, there are bands that I've discovered through this podcast that would be great soundtrack bands.
I thought about doing that, picking 3 bands just that I learned about over the last 75 episodes.
Yeah, so that one of my trios is that. It is bands that I found through doing this podcast. And number 1, tremendous band, Floating Worlds.
Yeah, they were great.
Greek symphonic rock band. The album that I found from them, Skywatcher from last year, is basically a concept album that's like a soundtrack to a story they're telling. Totally inspired by 80s and 90s movie soundtracks. It's got a tremendous sound, and clearly they've shown that they can do a soundtrack. So why not bring them in?
That's a great choice.
Number 2, kind of a similar story. If you want that kind of '80s movie soundtrack sound, you go out and get Nestor.
Yeah, Nestor would be at the top of my list
Yeah.
of the bands we've discovered on this podcast.
Swedish melodic rock AOR band, Teenage Rebel. Just it screams soundtrack. It's a great song, and to me that it gives you that feeling of a movie in the '80s.
That still might be my favorite album that we've had on this podcast, even through 75 episodes. We've listened to so many good ones. That's right up there for sure.
Yeah. And for number 3, I went, I Am the Intimidator would have been a good choice, too.
That is a great choice, Chris.
Because the thing is, if whoever that group actually is, if you basically told them, hey, here's my life, if they can come up with a concept album around like the last day of Dale Earnhardt, what can they do about your mundane existence? I think it'd be awesome.
For sure.
My third pick, kind of off the beaten path, but I figured it's a soundtrack. Why not go with something a little different sounding? And I went with Mothman and the Thunderbirds.
Nice. They were good.
Kind of a one-man project from Pennsylvania. Just this weird, proggy, sludgy, synthy thing, but I think it would make for really cool soundtrack fodder. And, their Portal Hopper album is certainly worth checking out, and I think you would understand what I'm talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are great choices. And like I said, that thought had crossed my mind. Kind of wish I'd gone back and done that, but Nestor would certainly be on my list. And the other two are not, wouldn't be very far off if they weren't on my list as well. So, but you have a second list as well.
Yeah, so just quickly, the mainstream acts, if you want good soundtrack music, you bring in Stan Bush.
That's a great choice.
Obviously.
Yeah, obviously.
I'm surprised Shane didn't pick that when I mentioned soundtracks, because this guy's the soundtrack guy.
Yeah.
Number 2, Halloween. I mean, we've just been talking about them almost all episode, but this one more because just how huge of a band they've been for my taste in music. I feel like any soundtrack of my life kind of needs them represented on it. And kind of with that same mindset, number 3 would be Megadeth.
Yeah.
They've had great success on soundtracks over the years, so I know that they can do that. And, I mean, they're the band that I listened to most throughout high school, so it would just be fitting.
Yeah, I think those are great choices. And again, I think that's where like you kind of went even though you also went
I went
with
every direction.
You went with the bands that you like, but you also went with bands that could do soundtracks. I think Shane kind of exclusively went with songs or bands that were influential at a specific time in his life. I think his wife did too with the Hanson
did pick Queen, and
maybe not so much.
They definitely did the song from Flash Gordon, which was amazing. So,
but yeah, interesting picks for sure. So again, I easily could have picked your Eagles, Billy Joel, like they're my favorite artists. I have reasons for all 3 of my picks. Number 1 is Fall Out Boy, because I would want my life story to be used in an AMV.
Yeah, that would make sense.
So I want them to do some crazy song that's like My Songs Know What You Did in the Dark or something like that. I want that to be one of my soundtrack songs so it can be used in an AMV, preferably like Dragon Ball Z or something that's in every AMV.
No, that makes total sense.
You want epic songs. I want Yes to be on my soundtrack. I want a 12-minute song about my life, and you got to choose a prog band. Dream Theater would be an honorable mention in this slot as well, but I think Yes is probably a little more up my alley, so I want a 12-minute story about my life, so Yes is going to get the cut as well. And
I can't argue with that.
And you know what? Who has ever in rock told a better story than the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald? I want returning from the grave, Gordon Lightfoot to come back and write a song, because if you can write a song that makes a boat wreck sound like this amazing epic event, it's the guy I want on my soundtrack writing my life story as well.
Yeah, that'd be like a quadruple CD soundtrack.
I mean, 6 songs.
But it would open up some weird possibilities of like Gordon Lightfoot collaborating with Yes. Like something that we never got, which would have been really wild, I think. And Fall Out Boy. I mean,
of course. Like I said, and honestly, like we've had some of these where I'm like up to the last minute of the podcast, coming up with my choices. This one, like almost immediately after I posted it in Discord, within 5 minutes, I had these choices, because I was like, okay, we're gonna really think outside the box here instead of just picking my 3 favorite acts. Not that I don't like those 3, but just wanted something that was just kind of silly, honestly, that would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, no, I mean I think it's best when the answers just come right to you immediately, because that means that the topic resonated with you, and
to some capacity, you probably have already been thinking about that.
Just it's one of those things. Honorable mention if I had to throw one in, like if he had to, because that's one thing we didn't do was like pick existing songs, and we'll come back to that. But the song 1979 is one of those songs that obviously resonates for a lot of reasons. Besides being my birth year, it just feels like it's just a song that's so melancholy in its very nature. I think that would be, getting Smashing Pumpkins to do something like that.
I kind of want to go back and listen to Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness. Like, I remember when I got it back when it came out, I loved the hit songs off of it, but it's like a double album. Like, I never, back then, I don't know if I just didn't give enough time to the rest of the songs or just didn't think they were worth the time. I know a lot of people think that the whole thing's amazing, but I've never really gotten past kind of like the 5 or 6 hits off of it, which maybe I need to give another listen.
Could be the time to do that, but good time to remind you right at the end of the episode, because I forgot to paste the link sooner. You can tell us your 3 songs, or 3 artists, I should say, that you could have write your life story by joining the Discord, and I will post that link in the chat on both sides. Join our Discord and let us know who are the 3 bands that you would choose. And again, we are going to come back and do the song type at some point as well, so you can get your picks in for that as well. But join the Discord, let us know what you would choose. Who are the 3 bands that would perform the soundtrack of your life? Some interesting stuff out there. But that is going to wrap things up for this edition of the Hard Rock Empire. Great to have you along with us for another week. We'll be back again next Sunday night on the music of July the 11th coming up next Sunday night as we head into August, believe it or not, for another episode of the Hard Rock Empire. Big thanks to Chris. Big thanks to Shane and his wife for chipping in as well. Big thanks to Mike, as always, for all his work he does on this podcast. And a big thanks to you whenever and wherever you happen to check this out. And finally, a big thanks to Stove Lake Media for their continued support of our podcast. We'll be back next Sunday night with another episode of the Hard Rock Empire. Until then, don't forget to join the Empire, the Nerdcast Empire.